Mambition, mambition, mambition. Woohoo! Woohoo!
Hello,
Welcome back,
everyone.
guys. Welcome back.
Do you know what? I love that I'm the normal one in Mambition because I am not normally the normal one in any conversation. So I wear
Normal is
that,
overrated. Normal is overrated.
but I wear the being the normal Mambition presenter with pride. I feel. Hi, everybody. Feels like ages since we've recorded one.
It does. It does. It feels like probably a couple of weeks actually, which is not like us.
Hmm.
But the good thing is we do have a few episodes banked, guys. So don't worry. We do have one coming out every single week. So thanks for joining us on this amazing episode. This one we have a guest for you called she's Steph Edusei. Welcome, Steph.
Hi, thanks for
Hi, great
having
to
me.
have you.
No
Really,
problem.
really great to have you here.
Yeah, I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of a lowdown about Steph. So, Steph Edusei is the CEO of St. Oswald's Hospice and Director of Northeast Chamber of Commerce, a transformational leader, Northern Power Women Awards 2022. She combines her healthcare leadership with community impact as chair of Elliott Smith Dance and founder of the Black All Year podcast. With over 30 years in Girl Guiding UK and previous roles, including non-exec director at Newcastle Hospital's NHS Trust, Steph champions diversity while balancing a role as mother to one daughter and two stepchildren. And she's also named in Business Cloud Northern Leaders to 2024. Welcome, Steph.
Woo!
I know it sounds quite impressive, doesn't it, when you say it like that?
Yeah, sit back and let the glow.
Yeah,
And can we also just say, as well as all of those accolades, proud mum as well, because you are born and bred in the Northeast, aren't you?
definitely a mum. Yes,
Ah,
always a mum.
love that, love that. I think that's a great place to actually start because I think I came to Northeast. I think it's been 4 years now, and obviously I know that the Northeast is a lot more diverse. But it'd be great to hear about what it was like for you growing up here because I know it was very different then, right?
It was, yeah. And so, I mean, for me, I'm mixed heritage. My dad's Ghanaian, my mum is a Geordie, and I grew up in the 70s and 80s in Newcastle, and it was really different back then. I mean, I knew pretty much every black person in Newcastle. I called them auntie or uncle. It was that kind of relationship, and there were a few people who were there from around from other ethnic groups, so more South Asians, I would say, pretty much as it is now, and some East Asians, but it was predominantly white, and it was just really quite challenging. I think partly being black, but then being mixed heritage to know who you were and how you fitted in. So I think one of the things with being mixed heritage is you don't really fully belong to any group. And at the time, there weren't that many mixed heritage people around. There certainly weren't mixed heritage adults that I could see at all. So it was that real kind of lack of or struggling to work out who I was and where my place was. The Northeast was racist. I think it's probably fair to say. But
Fair
then
enough.
so was the
Yeah.
rest of Britain. And I
Mm.
think when I briefly moved away from the Northeast to the Midlands, and I found the racism there far harder to deal with than I did in the Northeast.
Oh,
It was
really?
oh yeah, far more, very segregated actually. I wasn't used to that. I was used to people just having mixed groups of friends and things like that. And it was, the first time I was challenged for having a white boyfriend was in Leicester,
Right.
whereas it hadn't really been much of an issue in Newcastle. Um, there was a huge amount of this kind of you stay with your own in the
Mm.
Midlands that I just hadn't experienced at all. But, we had all of the name calling, we had all of the comments. I know my parents as a mixed couple um got a lot of stick, and my mum had to deal with a lot of stuff, particularly my sister's a few years older than me, and particularly for her, I think when she was born, a lot of people looked down on my mum because she had a brown baby.
Oh, my
So
goodness.
yeah, there was a lot of stuff that just I think in some ways I've just blank over it, and I'm sure if you spoke to my siblings, they they seemed to feel it more than I did. I think I just walked around in a little rosy world made of my own creation and imagination a lot of the time. But I remember things that I don't think I realized at the time it was racist. So having kids sing at me in the playground, Cadbury's make them and they cover them in chocolate, which was an advert of the time. And that was obviously referring to the colour of my skin.
Mhm.
The wonderful group Boney M have a song "Brown Girl in the Ring," which I hated because that was basically I was shoved into the centre of a circle, and as people clapped, and it was like "Dance, brown girl, dance." Um,
Oh,
so there was
I've
stuff
heard that
like
from a few people, Steph,
yeah,
actually.
Yeah.
and it was just that always feeling othered, always feeling different, I think was really quite challenging and added to this feeling of not belonging that I really developed in my early teens, and continued through a big part of my life.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that because I think that's, I am because I'm in a mixed obviously relationship, so
Mhm.
I always think the previous generations have paid such a price for me to be able to, I know it sounds silly, but to be able to even have been in a mixed relationship today and not necessarily feel any kind of angst about that. I
Mhm.
imagine that it's the stepping stones of what your parents have done, or the
Yeah,
people that generation has done to, they've taken on the burden and the responsibility in a way, and they've opened up the opportunity for me to be here today, right, with my husband, and walk down the street and no one look at us any differently. And I have mixed heritage children, so I'm interested in, again, that's why I was interested in your story, just because I'm looking at my children and they're half of each side, and it's a different kind of it's just a different kind of experience for them, isn't it? And thinking where do
yeah,
they belong and trying to find their way in the world. But I'm inspired, and thank you for sharing that, because I imagine that all those things you've been through has also shaped you to be the woman that you are today. That is, you're an advocate. So I'd love to know how all those experiences has actually been an advantage. Not, I don't want to say advantage, but see what I mean. Would you say it's allowed you to develop like the resilience that you now have, and the way that you look at the world, and you are an advocate for, diversity and for helping other people.
yeah. And I think for all that I have faced challenges,
Yeah.
I'm a woman, obviously. I am black, and I'm from the north as well, and working as I used to in the NHS, people would look on you as somebody who worked in the north as if, in fact, I used to have people saying, "Do you not want to come and work in London?" And I would just say, "Why on earth would I want to do that? Why would I give up everything that I've got up here to go and travel for hours every day and pay a fortune for a tiny little flat and things like that?" But there's this real kind of looking down on people who choose to live in the Northeast as if that's all you can do. You can't do any better than that. It's the best place ever.
I
Um,
think that there's, sorry to interrupt you there,
mm,
but I completely agree in that I feel that people who don't know the Northeast still like have this image of like the 70s. Like
oh yeah.
they don't realise how much it's changed.
I mean, I remember when I went away to uni and I was talking about something. I mentioned the metro, and somebody said, "What's the metro?" And I went, "Well, it's like a tube system." And they went, "Where?" And I said, "Well, in Tyne and Wear, Newcastle." And they went, "You have a tube?" And I said, "Well, it's not as big as a tube, but
No, horse and
I,
carriage.
well, I did. I felt like saying, we have cars as well, and we don't just have cobbled streets." There was this real
Brilliant.
kind of, honestly, I do think people think that we're still stuck in the 1940s and we all go down pit type thing.
Yeah, like we live at Beamish.
Yeah. so, so so you kind of, I had all of this stuff
Hmm.
going on that just having to face that and address that, and it made me, I think part of who I am, I'm just I hate unfairness. It's a core value of me. I hate unfairness. And so for all that I've had all of those challenges to overcome, I also recognize that I've been really, really fortunate as well. My The reason my dad came to the UK is because he comes actually from quite a wealthy family in Ghana and was sent over here for his education. And my parents both really valued education and wanted us to go to university and things like that. So I had quite a middle class upbringing. My parents sacrificed a lot to make sure that we had a house in a good area and could go to a good school and all. So I've had quite a lot of privilege in those terms. I am lighter skinned, which brings privilege with it. I'm straight. I speak with a Geordie accent, best accent in the world. So I have a lot of privilege. So it's that kind of thing of, well, I've got a lot of unfairness in my life, which I don't like. I see even more unfairness. So why don't I use the skills that I've got to try and correct that? And there's always been that for me. I think it's that when I used to be as a teenage girl and used to get really wound up, not that I don't now, but used to get really wound up about sexual inequality and sexism. I have that kind of real fire to make things right and to make things better for people. And I'm lucky enough, like I say, to have some skills and privileges that mean I can make a bit of a difference.
Is that why you got into girl guiding as well, Steph? Because of the kind of gender inequality?
No, no. I mean, girl guiding was kind of it's in the family. So my mother and my aunt had both been members of guiding from being young. Although my mum dropped out of guides and went back, and my aunt had never left. She was a leader. So it was just something that we did. And I started as a brownie age 7 and I've never stopped. So I think I'm now it's something like 44 years or something in guiding and
Mhm.
34 years as an adult leader. Um, it's just become a part of what I do and who I am, but love the sense of being able to give girls and women opportunities and friendships and correct some of that narrative that I think is fed to girls and women about how we have to be with each other and
Mhm.
that we have to compete and that we have to, that thing resources and men and jobs and all that I think are scarce and it's so we've got to be really confrontational with each other and bitchy about each other. That's not what you see in guiding. It's very much about a sisterhood and people coming together and that's kept me there, I think. But no, I don't think I had a choice. I think it was just I was signed up to Brownies age 7 and that was it. I loved it.
I like that. I think we're actually thinking of getting my son into is it beavers?
Beavers, yeah.
Yes, but my husband was saying that it's about what it builds in children, and I do
Mhm.
love that. And I think because the best we can do is prepare our children, right, for a world of you never know what's coming for them. So if we can prepare them for any sort of to develop traits like that, it just
Mhm.
makes they're much more prepared to
Yeah.
live in the world that they will be in.
And
Um,
my first
yeah,
experience
that's
of
fine.
leadership was in guiding.
Oh, okay.
So aged 8 or whatever, I was made um, a, a sixer in brownies and had a
Mhm.
little group of brownies that I had to collect their subs in every week and mark the register and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And then throughout guides and becoming a patrol leader and things. And that was, although well, we did call it leader, but I was a patrol leader. But when I look back on some of the skills that I learned then, I can see that I still have to use them today. So I say guiding and scouting and things like that are fantastic for kids because
Mhm.
it gives them a chance to learn skills in a way that's really good fun.
Yeah, that's amazing because I think that's the best, like you said, that's the best we can do for our children, isn't it? And it's amazing how, at such a young age, it allowed you to maybe get a glimpse, right, into the leader that you are today.
Mm.
I'm also interested because you're obviously someone who's like, I think multi hyphenated. You dance. So tell us more about like all these many versions of Steph.
Yeah, many versions of the same person. Yeah. Well, you're right. I mean, I've got obviously my very professional chief executive persona, and that's my day job. But I also am a dance teacher. I dance myself, guide leader, as you say, mom. Community worker, so I do kind of like this whole range of different things, and part of that is about just keeping me interested. I've got one of these brains that just loves getting involved and doing things. And I can get bored quite easily. It's one of the reasons I love my role at St Oswald's Hospice, because one minute we can be looking at patient care and something that's really important around that, and then the next minute it's about something that's happening in one of our shops, or it's about fundraising in a different way, or it's about kind of some of the national stuff that I'm involved in around hospices. So it just means that there's lots of different things for my brain to be interested in, and to keep things keep me entertained and interested and stimulated, so I don't become stale or bored about anything.
Yeah, there's always a new challenge, something
Yeah,
to look at.
yeah,
But I always wonder how, because I think there's obviously the downsides to that, right? Or to not, maybe not even for you, because you're multi hyphenated. Because people always say, "Oh, stick to one thing. If you want to be successful, stick to one thing." So I'd love to know, how do you manage that so that it's not like overwhelming? Rather, it's more like you're just expressing different versions of yourself in different pursuits. Do you see what I mean?
yeah. I mean, time is always going to be an issue and a challenge, and knowing when you have to just say, "I can't do that,"
Okay.
is can be a real challenge. And it took me a long time to learn that one. I still do have pinch points where, for some reason, everybody decides that every part of my life has to happen in that week. And, and you kind of go, what is it about that date where everything needs to happen on that date? So that happens probably about 2 or 3 times a year. So I still
Okay.
do have things like that where it just becomes incredibly pressured.
Yeah.
But there is something about knowing what you're good at and focusing on that. But I think what I do is I use, in each part of my life, I focus on what I'm good at in that. And they all contribute and support each other. So the stuff that I do around dance and performance, actually a lot of that is about me getting a bit of rest and relaxation and recharge and difference, and the creativity that that gives me allows me to be better at work. But it also helps with things like presenting, which is a core part of what I do at work. Being able to do that, and also being able to connect with people, because quite often we'll connect and we're talking about hobbies and things, and I'll mention about dancing, and people will go, "Oh, I used to love doing so and so a dance," or "My daughter does, or my son does so and so a dance." So it gives you lots of points of reference there that are really useful. Um, and I think it is that importance, as I said, about finding things that are going to fill you back up. So when something is draining you, what is it that nourishes and enriches you? And for different people, it's different things. For me, dance is one of the things. The reason that I got back into dance after a really long break was that I missed it, but also I was still working for the NHS at the time, and I needed a moment in a week when my brain wasn't fixed on work or home. And I went back to ballet. And what I loved about that hour that I had in ballet was, you have to be pretty present. You can't stand on one leg and be thinking about what's for tea or about the business case you've got to finish, because you're going to fall over. So it just gave me an hour in the week that was just completely and absolutely in the moment and about me, and not about all of the other things I had to think about. And that was so valuable at that point, with a young daughter and a really, really pressurized job.
I think that's really important. And that, when we talk to people, we do kind of come across people who've got their own strategies for how you manage all of these different threads. And it sounds like that had that moment where you could kind of have the mindfulness, but also then it's getting your exercise at the same time. It's, doing all of those things. And I also just really admire anyone who has the talent or skill at being able to dance, because I've been told I am unteachable at
Don't
dancing.
believe it for a
No,
second.
well, that's what everyone says. They say it's not about no one's unteachable. It's just bad teachers, but it's not true. It's genuinely not true. I did some dancing with a Greek dancer on holiday, and he was like, "I'm a dance teacher. I will absolutely make sure that you can learn this dance." And by the end of it, he said the thing about there's no bad students, only bad teachers. And in the
Wow.
end, he was like, no, apart from you, you just can't do it. So I'm very, very jealous of anyone who can dance. And it sounds lovely to have that kind of passion and that creative outlet when you've got such kind of high pressured stuff going on the rest of the time.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think for me as well, it was a little bit of therapy. So my dance teacher then, my ballet teacher then, is still my ballet teacher now,
Okay.
and she's an amazing woman. She's in her early 80s, and she just seemed to know when actually I needed to talk more than I danced.
Okay.
And we would sit and talk about life and stuff that was going on, and she just has this knack, and I think some of that is it's lovely now that I teach when you particularly when I talk to parents. So I'll talk to parents about their children that I've taught, and they'll tell me about what their child, who's probably now an adult, but what their child got out of that time that they had with me, and how my teaching made them feel and gave them the space, no matter what their size, shape, or talent was, to be the best that they could be. That's a really special thing to know that you've had that impact on somebody's life, and given them that space to just create. And I would say, Alex, that you can dance, you just have a unique style, I think, is probably what I'm hearing.
I really feel that I needed a nicer teacher maybe as well. We did a recital. This is my last dancing related story. We did a recital when I was 5, and we had to sort of run across on tippy toes and like do little fairy wings. And I ran across the hall, and I've always been quite heavy footed, quite clumsy. And apparently I flapped my arms like I was like trying to take off like some sort of bird, and the entire room laughed at me. And I, like, apparently because it was so funny, it was cute. But I still remember that moment of like, oh my god, an entire room of adults has just
Oh, that's cruel.
laughed at my head.
Alex, you're having the last laugh. You're podcasting, darling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll never like. I feel like even if when you see somebody who is like the joke person on Strictly or whatever, that would be me, because I cannot do arms and legs together. Just does not work for me. But I have other creative
We all have our
outlets.
insecurities about ballet.
I definitely think it's everyone's so different. I think it's like I said, it's we laugh about it, but it's just about finding what is you, right, or what you're good at. And look, Alex, you found podcasting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. But I think actually that, Tiffany, that's a really good point, because and I think that's in everything. We sometimes we try to be
Mm,
somebody else's vision of what that should be. And I know I did that for a long time in being a manager and a leader. I tried to be what I was told a leader looked like. And that was based on a very Western male white model. It was even down to the way I dressed. Like, I joked to people, but it wasn't really a joke. I tried to look as much like a middle-aged white man as I could,
Did you have
which
the
is
suit? Did you have
which,
the suit
yeah, which is like
or the
well,
trousers?
I used to wear trouser suits all the
All
time. I didn't wear
right.
color. I used to wear my
Wow.
hair straight, virtually no makeup, no
Mm,
jewelry, and stuff like that. So I really did try my best to fit in. And there's also within the NHS, there's a bit of a uniform that leaders wear, and I tried my best to wear that kind of uniform, and I, it just wasn't me. And I could do it, but I didn't thrive in it. It took a lot of energy. And it was only when I got the confidence to actually believe that I was good enough myself, and that I could be a leader the way I wanted to be, not the way that other people said I should be. I think that really changed me as a leader and made me far more valuable as a leader, because I wasn't trying to be somebody else. And in life, I think, we can think that we have to be a certain way. So dancing. You think you have to dance a certain way. You've got to do certain kind of steps. You've got to look a certain way. But actually, what is dancing? It's about moving your body to the music and enjoying yourself. That's what it comes down
I
to.
can do
You,
that.
exactly. People, you may not want to get on
agree.
stage and people watch you,
Yeah.
but actually you can dance because you can do that. As a leader, for me, it's about making sure that people have the right environment for them to thrive in. It's not about me being able to do everything because I can't, A,
hmm
I don't have the time, but actually that's not what it's about. It's about making sure that other people have what's right for them so that they can do the stuff that they're far better than me at.
Mm.
I can only be myself to do that. If I try to be somebody else, then that's not going to create that right environment for them. So, yeah, I think there's something about really not trying to be something else,
Mm.
finding out who you are and how you are, and being that to the best of your ability instead of trying to be somebody that you're just not.
So it's the stuff around authenticity, really, isn't
Yeah.
it? Of like, and not trying to fit into the box that you feel like you have to be in. I think that's really interesting, Steph, to kind of hear your journey as well, away from trying to do it the way you felt you should to that more authentic place and realizing your true value, being confident to get out there and actually the kind of transformative impact that that's had on your career rather than if you try to stay fitting within that box. I think it's a really powerful lesson for people.
Yeah, and it's not been an easy journey. And I wish I'd learnt my lesson a long time ago. It would have made some of my life a lot easier. Although I probably wouldn't be who I am now if I hadn't been through that. But I mentioned about kind of that feeling of not being enough, and that did kick in preteen, if I'm
Mhm.
realistic, and just got worse. And people called imposter syndrome. I called imposter phenomena. I've pinched that from John Amici because it it's not an illness, it's not a mental health condition, it's not something to be cured of, but it's actually an experience that we have. Of feeling like we're an imposter and not good enough. And it took me to be physically and mentally unwell before I realized that I really had to get it under control because I was allowing it to push me to do things that just weren't good for me in terms of the amount of work that I was doing, who I was trying to be, who just wasn't me. And that takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus to act out of character. Um, and I was just miserable. I was on the brink of depression, if I'm honest. And so to really kind of go, this has to stop. I can't, despite decades of this, I cannot continue like this anymore. And do that work to get the imposter phenomena under control, so that I don't allow it to control me anymore. I don't even allow it to influence my decisions anymore. And when it does rear itself up, I can recognize it for what it is and go, oh, that's interesting. What made that trigger there? And pop it back again, kind of go, thank you very much, and off you go, and move on with what I need to do and learn from it. I think is it it's taken some effort and continues to take some work just to keep that at bay as I go into new situations and new environments, to make sure that I don't allow it to creep back and start controlling and manipulating me again.
Isn't it funny how being to be ourselves is the hardest thing to do? Isn't that
Mm,
just, it's like the contradiction of being a human being. It's like, but this is me. And it's like, that's exactly what we try to hide. And I find that very interesting. And I think that's is one of the reasons why I'm so glad I'm a mother, because I get to now really kind of study my children and I suppose be quite one of kind of the key figures in their life. And I think
mm,
it's such a privilege for me because I watch them and I study them all the time, and I'm always trying to just understand who they are without me trying to change that. I just want to see who they are and really
Mm.
understand them. And I think that information is so important. And I'm almost giving it back to them. I'm almost like, oh, I try to, I watch my son how he is and I explain to him how he is. And because my son is really calm, my daughter's super chaotic. Sometimes he gets frustrated that she's playing with something and he wants to tidy up around her. But then she
Mm.
wants to play and he gets annoyed. And I say to him, you're different, she's different. And it's interesting how it's just like, for me, I want to keep that, whatever they are. I just want them to know that, and just know that there's no
Yeah.
need to change. And I think it's interesting, isn't it, how we just we want to be the opposite of that, but our lives actually become better when we tap into that authenticity. I'd love to know though how that authenticity for you now comes through on your kind of like, I suppose, like social media and the outlet that you have in that way of talk, because I know you're quite active on social media. How have you found that kind of journey of going from obviously being an amazing professional behind the scenes and then coming now and being on social media and kind of talking and sharing your thoughts on diversity and different topics? How did you find that transition?
And I
Yeah.
guess, sorry, I guess the
Yeah.
podcast comes into there as well.
Yeah. And I think it's been so. If we go back 10 years,
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it. I was on social media and I would post and I had my own business and I was sharing stuff on LinkedIn, but it was all written. And I was absolutely terrified that I would make a fool of myself if I did a video. And actually did a little online workshop about going live on Facebook at the time and things. And I think I think I had to tell myself to get over myself, if I'm honest. And there was almost like how important do you think you are that you're going to say something or do something online that is going to kind of go viral and completely shatter your life and the life of everybody you love. It's like, come on, really? It could happen. I dare, it could, but really, and there is some stuff that you want to do and achieve that you can't do if you don't step out of that little comfort zone that you're in. So it was just a kind of baby steps. Let's do something. Let's do a little bit more. Let's do a little bit more. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I have had some pushback and some flack online, and each time you get it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting that. And um, but because I'm driven by a purpose, I'm not doing it, and this is not to throw shade on anybody that does this, because actually this is some people's jobs, but I'm not doing it to sell perfume. I'm doing it because it's something that's really, really important to me. If selling perfume was really, really important to me, then that would be something that would be fine. But for me, this is about fairness, as I say, it's about equity. It's about St. Oswald's Hospice and getting people to understand what we do and to buy from our shop so that we can carry on doing what we're doing. There's always, when I'm posting, there's almost always a purpose behind it. So if I'm going to achieve what I want to achieve, I've got to push myself to do that. And the more I've done it, the easier that it's got. And also, I know that when I talk to people, it's more effective than when I write. So doing things like videos is really helpful for some people. I do still do the written content as well, because I know some people do prefer that. Um, but it's about finding those ways to connect with people and for them to understand what it is that I'm trying to say and do. And the feedback that I've had, I mean, you talked about the Black All Year podcast, and I was at the Hospice UK conference not long ago, and a chief exec came up to me there and thanked me for the podcast and said, "We have learnt so much. A lot of our team are looking at that." He said, "And I know I'm not your target audience. I'm a middle-aged white man. Um, I'm not your target audience." And I said, "Actually, you are."
I feel like you've
Because
probably got loads to learn.
yeah, and I think that's the thing with Black All Year. It's yes, I want it to be something that Black people can listen to and identify with and maybe learn some stuff from. But I also want it to be something that others can listen and go, "I didn't realize that." Or, "Oh, I want to know more about that. I'm going to learn more about it." Because sometimes until something's put on your radar, if it's completely outside of your experience, you don't know to look for it, because why would you? It's a bit like if somebody said, "Well, Did you realize we think this is air? It's actually bright green and it's sticky. Well, we wouldn't look for something that's bright green and sticky because we can't see it or feel it. But once you know it's there, you can start learning more about it and finding out about it. And I think that sometimes is the thing with experiences of people who are ethnically minoritized, is that that's so far outside of the experiences of people who aren't, that you don't see it or you don't recognize it's a thing. So when I talk about people touching my hair, for example, a lot of white people are absolutely horrified that that happens, but it happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And once you say it to people, they then become more aware of the fact that that is a thing. Or when you say, I'll stick with hair for now, that people will actually think less of me when I've got curly hair or braids than when I've got relaxed straight hair. Because I look more Western
Mm-hmm.
when I have my straight hair than when I have my natural hair. And that just wouldn't occur to you if you'd never had that and you don't personally hold those beliefs. So I think that the podcast has been really useful in getting some of that stuff out.
I think I was just going to say, as somebody who's, white and has sat in on a few conversations that we've had about kind of race and stuff like that, Tiffany, particularly after the riots, I imagine as well the podcast's really useful for those types of conversations that people probably just feel a little bit uncomfortable having. They don't want to put their foot in it. They don't want to inadvertently come off as racist. But actually, by listening to the podcast, they can educate themselves to not put themselves in that situation, or kind of understand a bit more like what questions are okay to ask and things like that, even well-intentioned people don't always get right. And yeah, they're worried about asking about it because they don't want to accidentally look like they're racist.
Yeah, and the thing I say is I'm not an EDI expert. I get it wrong and have got it wrong in the past. The thing is, where's that intention? So if I say or do something that is wrong, I want somebody to say, actually, that's not the right thing to say or do, and this is why. And then my response should be, I'm really sorry, I didn't know. I won't do it again.
Mm-hmm.
I quite frequently use the Maya Angelou quote of do the best that you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. That's all we can do as humans because we don't know everything and we won't always get it right. But there's something about being open to the fact that you will be wrong and to correcting that I think is really important. And the problem is that there's too many people who think that they can't ever be wrong and that making a mistake is such a terrible thing that they won't admit they've made a mistake. If you don't make mistakes, as moms, your kids learn by making a mistake probably 6 or 7 times in a row, and then and then they go, oh, if I do that, it hurts. I won't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Um, it's really core to how we learn and grow. So why as adults would we suddenly then go, no, I can't make any mistakes now. I've got to be perfect in everything that I do. And if anybody suggests I've done something wrong, it either means I'm a terrible, disastrous person and should go away and never try anything new again, or I've got to go on the attack and defend myself.
Yeah, I've got like double down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about motherhood then.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, because I know when we spoke, you mentioned that, I just want to hear, I suppose, your motherhood story in terms of, I know you said you went back to work when your daughter was 11. I'd love to hear more about that and, how your relationship has changed with her in terms of, I suppose, especially with her being grown up and now appreciating maybe the sacrifices you made for her. I'd love to know how that's evolved.
Yeah. So it wasn't 11. I went back full time when she was 11 months.
Oh, 11,
So
oh,
yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes.
That's what I meant,
I
11
was
months.
like,
Yeah, yeah, I meant 11.
you know
Not
what?
11, imagine.
I hate to say this, but if I'd been at home for 11 years, I don't think I would still be a mom. I think
Fair
I
enough.
think one of us would have killed each other. Um,
I appreciate that. I do appreciate that.
yeah. So yeah, I found being a mother really quite challenging, I think, in some ways, because almost from the start, it was like being a single parent. So unfortunately, my husband at the time wasn't the most supportive when it came to anything to do with childcare or looking after the house or anything like that. And I was at the time, um, I was working in a senior management role in the hospital. It was a really busy, pressurized role. Quite quickly after then, I then moved into the ambulance service and had an assistant director role and had to be away for work, probably a couple of nights a month rather, with a young child. And what that then resulted in was me having to get my parents, and mainly my mum, to look after my daughter because I couldn't rely on my husband to do that. Um, but it has been, I think, one of the well, it is the best and the proudest achievement that is bringing up my daughter. Um, she is strong and she is feisty. It's really interesting sometimes when people meet her, not so much now, but a few years ago, people would go, didn't think that's what your daughter would be like at all. And I went, really? And they'd say, yeah. And I'd say, imagine me without a filter. And then they went, oh, yes. And I love that about her, that she's
Yeah.
just,
Hmm.
she's fierce uh, um but I think it was interesting when you were talking before, Tiffany, about that bringing up children and wanting them to be themselves. And I think it's really important that we don't put our expectations on our children. And I
Mm.
know that my daughter has at times compared herself to me. So when she first had to do presentations for school,
Oh.
she would really beat herself up because she said, well, you're so good at doing presentations and I'm not. And I had to go, yeah, but I've had 30 years of experience of doing this. You're just starting. And that I've always tried to say to her, I want you to do well in life and I want you to be happy and things, but it's not about my standard of what that is. We had discussions about I wanted her to get a degree. I wanted her to go to university. She said it wasn't for her. And I said, that's fine, but life is easier if you get a degree. So she's doing a degree apprenticeship now because that was her way of doing what felt right for her. But she acknowledged what I was telling her about it's easier to get on in life if you've got a degree under your belt.
Mhm.
Um, I used to say to her about, I say, if you get a boyfriend or a girlfriend, because either's fine. And it got so much that she turned around once and she said, I hate to disappoint you, ma'am, but I'm not gay. And I was like, I'm not saying you have to be. I'm just saying it's okay no matter what. I don't mind.
Oh.
It's fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that it, it's something that I'm really mindful of is that your children aren't yours. They're not your
Mm.
property. They're not your ownership. You are blessed to be a part of their life and to help support and guide them as best you can. But they'll be what they want to be and they'll do what they
Yeah.
want to do. And you kind of a bit like you're there to catch them when they fall down,
Yes.
but also to just stand back and let them run when they need to run. And that's difficult. It's a really, really challenging thing to be because you just want to go, no,
And tell
don't
them
do that.
what to
Do
do,
this.
right? Yeah. I'm the same. I always say to my husband, I think I actually already tell my kids gonna be like, oh, mommy, just leave it, because I'm just so protective and I want to be there. I want to fight all their battles and I want to make sure that nobody does anything. Like, so I can just tell over the years we'll have a lot of going back and forth. But I think you're right. I am trying to be more conscious that it's more about, and I think also it's more about what they're watching from your behavior as well. A
Mhm.
lot of it's not just telling them. I mean, recently I had this thing where when I'm with them and I'm crossing the road, I'm telling them, look right, look left, wait till it's green. But when I'm crossing by myself, I'm going when it's red. And I realize that I'm just being a hypocrite because what about if they're watching me and I didn't
Mhm.
know that and they can see me crossing when it's red? They might do the same thing. So I've started this thing where I actually wait till it's green, however long it takes, because I realize I need to set an example, not just tell them, but I need to show
Yeah.
them. So it's
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it? How you just have to kind of allow them to evolve, but obviously guide them the best that you can, but they will make their own decisions.
Yeah. And I do feel sorry for Yasmin, my daughter, because she's had the full benefit of leader mom. So things like she used to say to me, will you stop doing that coachy thing on me? Because I'm
Oh.
a coach. So it was like, just tell me what to do. Tell me the answer. Um, and so she's had to kind of deal and contend with all of that, and some real challenges that I've had and we've had in terms of relationships that I've had and things like that. That she we've grown together, I think, through that, which has been lovely. And now I've kind of got a new relationship and two kind of stepdaughters who are of similar ages to my daughter, and that's been really nice and um challenging at the same time, in that they're not my daughters, and because they were almost adults by the time I met them, they were kind of formed, and we've had different parenting styles going on, things like that. So me navigating, so what does that relationship mean? Because I'm not their friend. That's kind of, I'm a real advocate for a parent is not a friend, and I'm not their friend, but actually I want to be a part of their life. I want to be able to support them. I need to know when I need to step in and when I need to step back, particularly out of respect for their mother. I'm not their mother and I don't want to be their mother. So I need to know how to work all of that. So that's kind of relatively new, kind of few years into that. And um just kind of feeling my way with that, and how that differs from the relationship that I have with Yasmin. It's been a new chapter for me.
Well, it's really interesting to hear about like the different dynamics and how, you try to respect the way that they're like, the way they've been brought up as well, and like working out what your relationship is with them. And I totally hear what you're saying about the not being a friend, and I think that's kind of like a really important thing, because it is easy to fall into that, saying yes to everything, wanting to have your kids' approval,
Mhm.
but actually you do have that role of helping to shape them. And I love what you say about letting them be who they are as well, instead of putting that pressure or expectations on them, because that's hard as well. But I feel like it's definitely a mistake I don't want to make with my little boy either. My dad had a lot of pressure and expectations from his parents. He was an only child.
Mhm.
And I feel like I don't want to repeat those mistakes. I'm sure I'll make my own. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, West African parents, my dad wanted doctor, lawyer, engineer. I was supposed to be the lawyer. Didn't happen. And I could have been the doctor, apparently. That didn't happen either. So he didn't get any of those three. Um, but so that, I think having that kind of real weight of expectation, or feeling that weight of expectation from parents,
Hmm.
and not wanting to let them down, even when I was in my really rebellious phase, that was really conscious. So I'm pleased now that my parents are proud of me and what I've achieved. They're proud of all of their kids, um, despite me not having done what my dad wanted me to do. Is quite an important thing for me, because you want your parents to be proud of you, and I know that Yasmin wants me to be proud of her, and I am. I keep saying to her that there's nothing she could do that would make me not love her. Some things sometimes she might do that make me not like her very much. Um, Less so now that she's getting older. But yeah, that importance of they're going to be who they want to be anyway at some point, or they're going to be miserable. So you may as well help and support them to be that, instead of trying to push them into a little mold of what you think they should be. And yeah, I think being a parent and being a mom in particular is just it's just such an honor. Not everybody gets to experience it. Not everybody wants to experience it, but it is such an honor that you need to approach it with the kind of deference that it deserves, rather than just kind of going, right, I'm going to make craft this little human into a mini me, because there won't be.
Yeah, I like that. That's such a reflective way to, I think, and wrap this up a
Hmm.
bit. I love what you said about the sacrifices that your parents made, and how almost like you kind of start off obviously wanting to make them proud, then you kind of have to go on your own journey. I think you have to find yourself. You have to find the person that you'll be most pleased with, and I think sometimes it can make you almost feel a bit disjointed from the dreams they have for you, and then eventually you come round. And I think that's kind of what children do as well. They will go through a stage where right now, with our kids being quite young, they're, oh, mommy, this, and they'll go through a friendship phase when it's all about the friends, and they might pretend you come to their school, they pretend they didn't see you or something, and then eventually, you kind of come round, and you want your parents all the time on the lookout for them. So, but I think I love the journey you've taken, because I think because I moved to Northeast, it's nice to kind of hear your stories. And a final question I would have, like a reflective one, what would you say to young Steph? Just kind of looking back on
Getting a bit
everything
deep
you've
there.
done.
Yeah, I think, well, aside from it'll all be okay, because I think that's something that I've probably needed to know a few times throughout my life, um, is that I am enough. I wish I'd recognised that sooner.
Oh, that's lovely.
Thank
That's
you.
really nice.
That's beautiful. We'll end it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Where can people find you online, Steph?
Best place is probably LinkedIn,
Okay.
but I'm also on Instagram and TikTok now. Get me?
Oh, you go, girl.
On TikTok. Well done,
Yeah.
Steph.
Is it Steph? Is it just Steph
Just
Edusei? Or
Steph Edusei, yeah.
okay, amazing. Well, thank you so much for listening to this one, guys. It's been amazing, and thank you, Steph. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.